How to speak so people stop interrupting you. The psychology of holding the floor without becoming aggressive. Some people are interrupted before they finish their first sentence. Others can pause in the middle of a thought, choose their next words carefully, and somehow the room waits. The difference is not always rank. It is not always confidence. And it is not simply volume. It is control. When people interrupt you repeatedly, it can feel as though the solution is to speak louder, move faster, or fight for every second of attention. But those reactions often make the problem worse. Speed makes you easier to derail. Anger makes the conversation about your emotion. Excessive politeness teaches the room that your sentences are optional. The real skill is learning how to hold the floor without turning every conversation into a battle. You do it through structure, timing, boundaries, and the quiet signals that tell other people your thought is not yet complete. This is not about dominating a room. It is about refusing to disappear inside it. Chapter 1. Why interruptions become a pattern. An interruption is not always disrespect. Sometimes people are excited. Sometimes a conversation is moving quickly. Sometimes two people begin speaking at the same moment. And sometimes the person interrupting genuinely believes they are helping. But repeated interruptions create a pattern, and patterns teach groups how to treat us. Imagine a meeting in which you begin explaining a problem. A colleague jumps in halfway through your second sentence. You stop immediately and say, "Go ahead." They speak for 2 minutes. When they finish, you do not return to your point. The meeting moves on. What did the room learn? It learned that your contribution can be replaced without consequence. Now imagine the same moment with one small difference. Your colleague begins speaking, and you calmly say, "Let me finish this thought." You complete the sentence. Then you turn toward them and say, "Go ahead." No argument, no accusation, no performance. But the room learns something different. Your words have edges. Your thought has a beginning and an end. Entering the middle of it does not make the rest disappear. People often assume that social treatment reflects a permanent judgment of their value. In reality, much of it is learned through repetition. Groups develop habits. If you regularly surrender the floor, people begin taking it without noticing. If you consistently finish your point, people begin waiting. This is why the first task is not to become more impressive. The first task is to stop rewarding the interruption. Many thoughtful people reward interruptions because they want to appear cooperative. They smile, become silent, and invite the other person to continue. They believe this prevents tension. It may prevent tension in that moment, but it creates resentment later. Healthy cooperation does not require you to erase yourself. You can be warm without being available for replacement. The goal is not to punish the person who interrupts you. The goal is to make finishing your thought the normal outcome. Chapter 2. The sentence. Before the interruption. Interruptions often begin before the other person speaks. They begin in the shape of your sentence. Some sentences sound complete even when they are short. Others sound negotiable from the first word. Listen to this opening. "Sorry, I just wanted to quickly say that maybe we should think about changing the schedule." Before the idea arrives, the speaker has apologized, minimized the time required, weakened the purpose, and presented the recommendation as a possibility they are not prepared to defend. Now listen to this. "We need to change the schedule for 2 reasons. The second opening creates anticipation. The listener knows a structure is coming. Two reasons means there is a first point and a second point. Interrupting after the first point will feel visibly premature. Structure protects speech. When listeners can sense the architecture of your thought, they are more likely to wait for its completion. This is why strong speakers often announce the shape of what they are about to say. There are three risks. The short answer is yes. The longer answer depends on timing. I agree with the goal, but I see one problem with the plan. Here is what happened, why it matters, and what I recommend. These phrases do more than organize information. They establish possession of the next few seconds. You are telling the room, without demanding it, that a complete unit of meaning is on its way. Weak structure invites people to search for your point. While they search, impatient listeners begin building their own conclusion. The moment they believe they know where you are going, they jump in. Clear structure gives them a reason to wait. This does not mean every sentence should sound formal. It means your important contributions should have a destination. Before you speak, ask yourself one question. What is the sentence I am trying to finish? Not the subject, not the background, the sentence. If you cannot identify it, you may begin speaking before your thought is ready. You circle the point, adding context while hoping clarity will arrive. That creates openings. Take one breath, find the conclusion. Begin there. Instead of saying, I was looking at the numbers yesterday, and I know we have talked about the budget before, and obviously there are a lot of factors involved. Say, the current budget will not cover the final phase. Then explain why. The point is not hidden. The listener knows what the evidence is supporting. People are less likely to interrupt a sentence that knows where it is going. Chapter 3. The physical signals of an unfinished thought. Conversation is not controlled by words alone. Your body and voice tell people whether you are continuing, concluding, or surrendering. When nervous speakers encounter resistance, they often shrink in several ways at once. Their volume falls, their pace increases, their eyes move away, their final words rise in pitch, their shoulders pull inward. The sentence begins to sound as though it is asking permission to survive. An interrupter hears an opening. You do not need to create a larger personality. You need to maintain continuity. Keep your eyes oriented toward the person or group. Keep your volume steady. Continue at the same pace. If another voice enters, do not instantly accelerate. Speed communicates panic. It turns the moment into a race, and the more aggressive speaker usually wins. Slow down slightly. Finish the clause you are already speaking. Then pause. This feels unnatural at first because interruption triggers urgency. Your nervous system interprets the competing voice as a threat to your place in the conversation. It tells you to hurry before the opportunity disappears. But rushing communicates that the opportunity can disappear. Steadiness communicates that you expect it to remain. There is also power in a small, controlled gesture. A lightly raised hand, palm relaxed, can signal one moment. It should not look like a command to stop traffic. It should look like punctuation. You can combine it with a short phrase. 1 second. Let me finish. I'll come to that. Then continue. The crucial part is what happens after the phrase. Do not explain the boundary. Do not say, I'm sorry, I know I've been talking for a while, and I don't mean to be rude, but if it's okay, I would really like to finish. By the time that sentence ends, the boundary has become a negotiation. Say fewer words, then return to the point. A boundary gains strength from the calm action that follows it. Chapter 4. 5 Phrases that Hold the Floor. You do not need a perfect response for every interruption. You need a small set of phrases that feel natural enough to use under pressure. The first is simple. Let me finish this thought. This works because it is direct without assigning motive. You are not calling the other person rude. You are describing the next action. The second is useful when the interruption is relevant, but early. I'm coming to that. This acknowledges that you heard the concern while maintaining the sequence of your explanation. You can make it even stronger by adding structure. I'm coming to that. First, we need to separate the cost from the timeline. The third phrase works when someone attempts to replace your conclusion. That's not quite where I'm going. Then state your actual point. This is especially helpful when a person interrupts with, "So, what you're saying is," sometimes their summary is accurate. Sometimes it changes the meaning. You are allowed to correct the frame before it hardens. That's not quite where I'm going. The problem is not the deadline. The problem is that ownership is unclear. The fourth phrase is useful in fast meetings. Hold that question for 30 seconds. Specific time makes the request feel contained. You are not rejecting the question. You are asking for enough room to complete the setup. The fifth phrase is for a repeated pattern. I want to make sure I can complete my answers. This is different from, "You keep interrupting me." The accusation may be true, but it puts the other person's character on trial. They can deny it, defend it, or argue about what counts as an interruption. The boundary focuses on the behavior you need. I want to make sure I can complete my answers. Then I'm happy to respond to follow-up questions. Notice what all 5 phrases have in common. They are short, they are specific, they do not apologize, and they immediately return to the subject. That final step matters. If you set a boundary and then abandon your point, the interruption still succeeds. Finish the thought. Chapter 5. When someone keeps talking over you. Not every interruption stops when you calmly continue. Some people increase their volume. Some repeat your name. Some keep talking as though your voice is not present. At that point, trying to overpower them can make the room uncomfortable without restoring your influence. Use contrast instead. Stop speaking. Look at the person. Wait. When they finish, do not reward the behavior by responding to their new subject immediately. Return to your original sentence. As I was saying, the decision we need today is whether to delay the launch. This technique is powerful because it refuses to let the interruption determine the agenda. The silence also makes the behavior visible. When 2 people talk over each other, the room experiences noise. When one person stops and waits, the room can see who is occupying the space. Your expression matters. Do not perform outrage. Do not laugh nervously. Remain neutral. You are not trying to embarrass them. You are allowing the interruption to carry its own social weight. If the person interrupts again, increase the clarity of the boundary. I'll finish, and then I'll give you the floor. If it happens a third time, the issue is no longer a conversational accident. We're talking over each other. I'm going to complete this point, and then I want to hear your response. This language protects both people. It names the problem and creates an order. Sometimes hierarchy complicates the moment. Perhaps the interrupter is your manager, a client, or someone with more formal authority. You can still hold the floor, but the language may need to emphasize usefulness. The next sentence is important. Let me complete the recommendation. I can answer that accurately if I finish the context. These phrases explain why waiting serves the conversation. Respecting hierarchy does not require communicating badly. In fact, leaders often interrupt because they believe they already understand the point. Your job is to make the missing information visible. You have the first part. The second part changes the recommendation. That sentence creates curiosity and gives the listener a reason to stop. Chapter 6. How to interrupt the interrupter. There are moments when you need to regain the floor after losing it. Perhaps someone has been speaking for several minutes. Perhaps they misunderstood your point and are carrying the meeting in the wrong direction. Perhaps you were asked a question, but another person is now answering it for you. Waiting politely may not work. You need to interrupt. The difference between a useful interruption and a destructive one is precision. Do not enter with a competing speech. Enter with a bridge. Use the person's name if necessary. Michael, let me clarify one thing. Dana, I need to correct that point. Before we move on, I want to answer the original question. Then, make one concise statement. Do not take the floor and spend 2 minutes proving why you deserved it. The longer you speak, the more your intervention feels like a takeover. Correct the direction. Restore the sequence. Continue. If someone is answering for you, try this. I can take that. Then, answer immediately. If someone misrepresents your position, say, that isn't my recommendation. My recommendation is to pause the rollout for 1 week. If a discussion has moved on before your point was heard, before we close this topic, there is one risk we haven't addressed. Strong conversational control is not passive. Sometimes it requires entering a space that was not freely offered. But the entry should create clarity, not more competition. Chapter 7. The meeting before the meeting. People who are interrupted frequently often focus entirely on what to do during the interruption. But some of the most effective solutions happen before the meeting begins. Prepare your first sentence. The first sentence establishes your pace and position. If you begin with a long runway of disclaimers, you may spend the rest of the contribution trying to recover authority. Write the opening as a conclusion. I recommend option 2 because it protects the deadline. Customer complaints increased after the policy changed. We have one decision to make today. Next, decide how your point is structured. Use numbers when appropriate. There are 2 reasons. I need to cover 3 items. The problem has 2 parts. This makes interruptions easier to manage because you can return to a visible place. That was the first issue. The second is staffing. Also consider the meeting format. If one person dominates every discussion, send a short, written summary before the meeting. This creates a record of your idea and makes it harder for someone else to absorb it without attribution. During the meeting, refer to it calmly. In the recommendation I sent this morning, I identified 2 risks. You are not demanding credit. You are connecting your spoken contribution to a visible source. If you are presenting, tell the group when questions will be most useful. I'll give the 2-minute overview, then I want your questions. That sentence creates an agreement before the first interruption occurs. And if a question comes early, you can say, hold that for the end of the overview. The boundary no longer feels personal. It protects a structure the group already accepted. Finally, choose your position carefully. In person, Sit where you can see the decision maker and the people most likely to engage. On video calls, keep your camera at eye level and your microphone clear. Technical weakness becomes conversational weakness when the room struggles to hear you. You should not need perfect production quality, but your signal should be strong enough that listening to you requires no extra effort. Chapter 8. The difference between brevity and disappearing. Many people who are interrupted try to solve the problem by saying less. Sometimes this helps. Brevity can create force. But there is a difference between removing unnecessary words and removing necessary presence. If you reduce every thought to one cautious sentence, the most confident person in the room may take that fragment, expand it, and become associated with the idea. Your point needs enough development to become identifiable. State the conclusion. Give the reason. Name the consequence. Make the recommendation. For example, the customer is not rejecting the product. They are confused by the setup. Support requests doubled after the interface changed. I recommend restoring the previous onboarding flow while we test a replacement. That contribution has a complete shape. Compare it with, maybe onboarding is part of the issue. The shorter sentence is not necessarily stronger. It is easier to ignore, absorb, or reinterpret. Do not confuse being concise with leaving your own thinking unfinished. The goal is complete brevity. Enough information to make the idea useful. No extra language that weakens it. Chapter 9. When the pattern is not your fault. Communication advice can become unfair when it treats every social problem as a personal failure. Sometimes you are interrupted because of bias. Research and workplace experience have repeatedly shown that status, gender, age, race, accent, job title, and organizational culture can affect who receives the flaw and who is expected to yield it. Perfect phrasing cannot remove every unequal dynamic. You can speak clearly and still encounter someone committed to dismissing you. Recognizing this matters because otherwise you may turn every interruption into evidence that you are not confident enough, skilled enough, or valuable enough. That conclusion is not always true. Your communication tools help you respond, but responsibility also belongs to leaders and colleagues. An effective manager notices whose ideas are being cut off. I want to hear her finish. Let's return to Daniel's point. We haven't heard from everyone. Good colleagues can also restore credit. That builds on the recommendation Priya made earlier. If you have influence in a room, use it to create space for others. And if you are consistently interrupted in one environment, despite clear boundaries, document the pattern. Note the meetings, the participants, and the consequences. Speak privately with a manager or trusted leader using specific examples. Do not say only, "Nobody listens to me." Say, "In the last 3 project meetings, I was asked for an update and was interrupted before completing it. Decisions were then made without the information I was trying to provide." Specific behavior is easier to address than a general feeling, even when the feeling is completely valid. The purpose of communication skill is not to adapt endlessly to disrespect. It is to give you more options. Chapter 10. Practicing authority without performing it. You do not need to wait for an important meeting to practice. Start in ordinary conversations. Notice when you abandon a sentence because another person begins speaking. The next time it happens, finish the clause. Not aggressively, not louder. Simply finish. Practice saying, "Let me finish that thought," when you are alone. The phrase should feel familiar in your mouth, before you need it under pressure. Record yourself explaining an idea for 60 seconds. Listen for 3 things. Do you begin with the point? Do you rush near the conclusion? Do you keep adding words after the sentence is complete? That final habit is common. A speaker makes a clear statement, feels the silence that follows, and begins weakening it. I recommend waiting until Monday. A strong pause. But then, unless everyone thinks Friday is better, because I'm flexible, and maybe I'm overthinking it. The speaker had the floor. Then they negotiated against themselves. Learn to tolerate the silence after a conclusion. The pause is not emptiness. It is where the listener processes what you said. You can also practice conversational structure. Take any subject and explain it in 4 steps. The point, the evidence, the consequence, the next action. For example, the report will be late. 2 data sources are incomplete. Publishing without them could produce the wrong forecast. I need both files by noon to deliver tomorrow. Clear thinking creates clear speech. Clear speech is harder to interrupt because every sentence appears to be doing useful work. Chapter 11. The Quiet Reset. Suppose you have already become the person everyone interrupts. You may believe changing the pattern will require a dramatic confrontation. Usually, it does not. Patterns can change through calm consistency. The next time someone interrupts, use 1 sentence. Let me finish. Complete your point. Do it again, the next time, and the next. Some people will adjust immediately. Others may look surprised. A few may test the new boundary because the old arrangement benefited them. Do not interpret surprise as proof that you were rude. When people are accustomed to unlimited access to your time, a normal boundary can feel unusually strong. Stay warm, stay steady, keep the boundary. You do not need to win every collision. You need to create a new expectation. That expectation is simple. When you begin a meaningful thought, you complete it. When another person has the floor, you listen. When the discussion becomes chaotic, you restore order rather than adding noise. This is not dominance. It is conversational self-respect. Conclusion. Finish the sentence. People learn how to speak with you by speaking with you. Every conversation contains small lessons, whether your no becomes a discussion, whether your pause becomes an invitation, whether an interruption replaces your point or merely delays it. You cannot control every person or every room, but you can stop sending the signal that your sentences are disposable. Begin with the conclusion. Give your thought a structure. Keep your pace steady when another voice enters. Use fewer words to defend the boundary. Return to your original point. And when necessary, let silence reveal what is happening. You do not need to become louder than everyone else. You need to become clear enough that the room knows when you are not finished. The next time someone interrupts you, resist the instinct to rush, disappear, or apologize. Take 1 breath, hold your pace, and finish the sentence. This has been Signal and Status. If this episode helped you communicate with more confidence and clarity, follow the show and share it with someone whose ideas deserve to be heard.